the board and the administration's attempt to silence that parent. And we have had an early vindication in that battle. His rights have been restored, and he can continue to object. And I think we all should object to the introduction of this critical race theory into the curriculum and policies and practices of South Middleton and every school district across Pennsylvania and across the country. And by the way, a quick look at the news, you'll see parents groups are forming all over the country and objecting to the introduction of this ideology, indoctrinating our teachers, our administrators, and our students that all whites are racist against blacks. And we're talking about one of the biggest stars of the critical race theory movement that, of course, comes out of academia. Where else would it come out of? It's not a part of the real world. It's a part of those liberal think tanks that are removed from reality to a large degree. Ms. Robin DiAngelo, she wrote a book called White Fragility. She was a professor of education, although I don't think she ever actually taught in a school. She taught teachers about how to teach in schools, and she got into this critical race theory. She got into this idea of white fragility, and is now rich. She left her position as a professor. She formed a for-profit, of course, consulting firm, and she's being retained all over the country by corporations that are being pushed and shamed into incorporating diversity training into corporations, into their policies and practices and other institutions, and including, of course, educational institutions that themselves are removed from the realities of the real world and the marketplace. So this woman has made a fortune, and she's written this book, and the book is being read, or has been read, by the superintendent down there at South Middleton, who is in favor of this JEDI program and this critical race theory introduction into the curriculum, policies, and practices at South Middleton. So I've been listening to her lectures, this Miss DiAngelo, and it sounds like a racial version of Marxism to me. She puts every individual into a class based upon race. So if you are white, you are in the white race. If you're black, you're in the black race. And then she posits those two races as antagonistic against the other. Of course, the whites are the predominant race. They hold the dominance in our culture, she says. And so they rule, and so that they're racist against the blacks. And she says blacks can't be racist, which is an interesting theory. And I wonder if that's the position that the South Middleton is going to take, that only whites can be racist, blacks cannot be racist. And Ms. DiAngelo says because blacks don't hold the dominant position in American culture, and so it's almost this dialectic, this material dialectic between the races that is the driving force of history, and is the core, at the essence of America. And this is what this woman is positing. And interestingly, she cannot cure whites of their inherent and systemic racism, because I'm thinking, wow. She's saying that all whites are racist and how horrible this is, and listing all of the degradations perpetrated by whites against blacks in American history. And I'm thinking, boy, she knows it all. She's brilliant. She knows the answer. She knows how to cure us of our white racism. And so I'm listening to lecture after lecture, waiting for the end. Where's the grand conclusion? Where's the remedy for all of this? And apparently there really isn't one. She doesn't really give you one. She talks about how basically this will never end. The fight will never end, she says. You just need more consulting. You need more training from her at however many $100 an hour to be aware of your racism. But again, She doesn't really teach us how we can cure ourselves of our inherent systemic racism. And that's kind of a letdown. So you don't need to read the book. I took you through it by listening to her lectures. All I can surmise about how we can move forward is, according to Ms. D'Angelo, this critical race theorist who wrote the book White Fragility, is for white people to become less white. That's what I'm getting out of this, and also to hire lots of diversity consultants to teach them and train them on how racist they are. Lastly, Ms. D'Angelo, this is the book being who wrote White Fragility, is being read by the South Middleton School District Superintendent. They are down there in Boiling Springs, and they've introduced this JEDI program, Justice, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion. They've hired a consultant willing to pay her up to $15,000 through a school safety fund, which is somewhat ironic to me that when we have these school shootings and our politicians in Harrisburg and Washington, they come up with their solutions. It's basically boils down to restricting our Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms, but also give more taxpayer dollars to the schools. Okay. Well, I can go along with that if the school is going to hire school resource officers, going to hire police officers or security personnel who will be there to protect my child and other children in those schools. But that's not what's happening here. Instead, South Middleton is using $15,000 in this grant money to hire a diversity consultant. And I'm not sure the diversity consultant is going to be able to prevent the next school shooting or to prevent school violence. Right now, she's teaching and training the teachers on the white teachers on how they're inherently and systemically racist. And I don't know how that's going to make our schools safer. I know it's going to anger a lot of white school teachers and a lot of white parents to bring a diversity consultant in and to pay that consultant to tell them they're racist. So I think it's just going to exacerbate whatever tensions may exist down there in South Middleton, and there really aren't any racial tensions down there. If you look into why the school board decided to move forward with this JEDI program, they received some letters from some alumni talking about racism at South Middleton, but I've done a lot of internet searches looking at news articles, and I can't find what it is. I mean, where is it? I mean, what are the specific examples of the racism that has caused the school board and the administration to hire this consultant and to revamp its entire curriculum? And maybe some parents in South Middleton or some alumni can enlighten me, and they're welcome to call in 717-697-4297 and show me the racism. I'd like to see it. It's right now, it's just something that the critical race theorists and the diversity consultants and our liberal left-wing friends down there say exists, but I'd like to see it in practice. That would be one thing. Anyway, this Miss D'Angelo, who is the prima donna of the critical race theory movement, she also denounces individualism and meritocracy, which, by the way, are two of the pillars of Western civilization, two of the pillars of the founding of America, and two of the pillars of our civilization today, that we are all individuals endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. That as individuals, we are responsible for our own conduct. A meritocracy, America, more or less, has been one of the greatest examples of a meritocracy in the history of the world. Of course, we've had some horrible exceptions to that with chattel slavery, Jim Crow, and segregation. No question about that. And all of that is being taught. all Jim Crow, segregation, slavery, as horrible and as heinous as it was, is a part of American history and has been taught and is being taught at South Middleton and in school districts across the country. So there's no objection there. We have to know our history if we are to know ourselves and know our present, if we're to do better now and in the future. But that doesn't mean we need to be trained and taught that all white people are racist against blacks, that blacks cannot be racist, and that we must incorporate into our curriculum and policies and practices this equity stuff, which means fair and just, or whatever it is they want it to mean, outcomes in academics and in discipline. And so these theorists, they look through the lens of racism when they're looking at grades. They're looking through the lens of racism when they consider discipline. So if you are an assistant principal at South Middleton or any other school district that incorporates this theory, and a black student misbehaves, I assume you are to judge and treat and consider that conduct through the lens of white racism against blacks. If a student at South Middleton, a black student at South Middleton or any school district across the country that incorporates this theory does poorly academically or does not do well on a test, the teacher is supposed to look at that, view that, consider that through the lens of white racism against blacks. That seems to me to be the practical application of this theory, although they won't say it like that. They won't expressly talk about exactly what it is that they intend to do. It's very vague and coy, really, which is a problem in and of itself. And we're going to talk more about the controversy bubbling over